If you can hear me, raise your hand. Yay, you all have hands. I work on a team most of my time as a developer and about a quarter of my time as Scrum Master. We'll be talking mostly about that, but I do have some experiences from outside of work that I'm weaving into this presentation as well. I'm a moderator at Coderanch, an online forum. Everybody is remote, and we do development, so we're completely asynchronous around the world, no office volunteer, which makes for some nice challenges. I mentor a robotics team locally in the neighborhood. That's mainly in site, but it also happens online for doing stuff after school when the school isn't open. And I write with my co-author while we're in the same time zone. We don't see each other that much. So a lot of remoteness that goes on here. At work, a few years ago, I was on a team that was distributed, which is good. We had 2 offices that both belonged to our company. We had a few full-time telecommuters, some people who telecommuted on occasion, and we ranged 2 time zones, East Coast and Central. Compared to what we're doing now, that was so much easier, although we didn't know it at the time because we didn't have those experiences. Then I transitioned to a new team where we were in 1 time zone, 1 office, nobody telecommuted, nice and boring from the point of view of remoteness. It also meant that all of the people on the new team had no experience whatsoever with remotes, and I got to teach them. Currently, we're in 3 offices, all of which belong to the company. We don't have any telecommuters that are full-time, although we do have one that telecommutes 3 days a week and people who telecommute on random occasions. And we span 3 time zones, East Coast, Central, and Pacific. We are going to be growing. Early next year, we're going to be going to 4 on-site offices. We can't expand any more time zones because we're US only. Woohoo, no more challenges there. And who knows, maybe we'll get a full-time telecommuter. For some of the things I'm going to be showing here, you have the opportunity to play along. If you'd like to do that, this URL goes to a Google Doc, which is going to show you the URLs we're going to be using so you can actually interact with some of these tools. While the URL is good after this presentation, some of the tools have links that are only good for 30 days. So if you wish to play along, I encourage you to do so now within the next 30 minutes. I'll pause for a moment for anyone who's hard at work typing in any URL/virtual-scrum. I know that's really hard to remember. All right, so before we get into the Scrum meetings, let's talk about the communication channels that you need to have to be a successful Agile team or a successful Scrum team. First of all, you need to be able to see each other. If you're in a company, you probably have enterprise Skype, and this is a solved problem and really easy. If you're at a smaller company that doesn't have these tools, or you're at a company that doesn't want to invest in these tools, or you're doing this on the side like I am with the writing project, you want to use free tools like Google Hangout or public Skype or even Discord if you've got a really big group or if you're a gamer. Those of us here probably don't use Discord, but ask your high school age kids, they totally know about it. I am going to attempt to show Google Hangouts on the screen. It's awkward to do it with yourself, so this one's not going to be a shared exercise. But we can see that I am on the screen, and I am projecting poorly because there's 2 of me. So we're going to go on from that one pretty quickly, and the other exercises are going to be much more fun. The other tool you want to make sure you have is persistent messaging. We have, from Google Hangouts, you have the ability to IM people while you're talking to them. Persistent messaging is stuff that lives on. Things that people who aren't on the team right now but are going to be on the team should see. Things that Fred, who's on vacation, should see when he gets back, that sort of thing. Slack is the gold standard here for persistent messaging. There are some other choices if you can't have Slack for whatever reason. I know some of us work in bureaucracies. That's difficult. NewsGator is a similar idea, although not as good, and a discussion board is even more not as good. But they all work, and it's important to have something from this list. So Slack is fun. Checking into Slack, we've got Slackbot here, and this is my Slack session for this. So if anyone wants to go in and try that, you can type something in and have it show up on the screen. While I leave that open for a moment for people to play, you actually need 2 types of messaging. You need persistent messaging, but you also need transient messaging. If you're messaging somebody, hey, Victor, you want to have coffee? We don't need that recorded for posterity, and we also don't need the entire team to see it. Right? For that, Google Hangouts or Skype are just fine, and that's a good thing. We also have AOL Instant Messenger. Is anybody missing it? Our very first instant messaging client? Yeah, I know. 5 a.m. Hey, you're going to be on YouTube forever. Whatever your tools are, learn them well. For example, we use Enterprise Skype at work. It has a polling feature. It has a whiteboard feature. These features are really valuable. If you're sitting around with someone in the room, sometimes you're going to do a little show of hands thing. And by being able to do that with a poll, you've made your remotes feel just as included as if they were sitting in the same room with you. Your last tool for communication is a phone bridge. Yeah, I know, how low-tech is a phone bridge? But you still need a phone bridge. There are going to be people who aren't at a computer, their computer won't boot up, they aren't working, they're taking this call from the airport, they're taking this call from the beach. Maybe you let people work from the beach. Who knows? If you work for a company, this is totally a solved problem and really easy to do. You use your corporate phone bridge. There's also free services like Join Me and free conference calling. Own it. Our team recently changed our phone bridge dial-in to the Fibonacci sequence. It's great. Nobody needs to look up the phone bridge anymore. It also lets us think a little bit in the morning when we're wondering what our phone bridge may be. Now that we have our communication tools, we can get started with sprint planning. My favorite tool, and if you're only going to try one thing yourself, this is the one to try, is pointing poker. So we're going to go to this URL, pointingpoker.com/33074. And I'm going to hit refresh because this tool has the shortest timeout of anything I've ever seen. You'd think they were running a bank. OK, so it refreshed. My session did not time out, but my Chromebooks did. So I'm going to have the Chromebook re-enter the session. And let's see if anyone else wants to enter the session. It's worth a shot. Woohoo, we got someone from the audience in the session. My team started using pointing poker after Hurricane Sandy. When I was in that window of a team where no one was remote, our office was closed, and all of a sudden, on 2 days' notice, we were running sprint planning remotely. Uh-oh. This tool is awesome and saved our bacon. So we're going to estimate here. We're going to estimate something fairly easy, and we're going to estimate in hours and not story points because story points are going to be team-specific, and none of you know what I consider to be a story point. So let's estimate by picking one of the numbers here. Where'd it go? Demos are great. I think we might have too many people in the session. Clear votes. OK, let's try that again. Shoot, we do have too many people in the session. I think we just load tested pointing poker. Man, well, I have slides. I was hoping to show this live, though, because this is my favorite tool in the whole presentation. It is a free tool, although I've donated money, and I think we just did a load test of it publicly for him. So you say how many points something's going to be. Let's say we all estimated 3 points or whatever. It shows up there, and it gives you a little tally on what happened. The most number of people I've ever used this on is 8. And I mean, to be fair, how many people do you have on a Scrum team? You're not having a vote with 20 people. If you all happen to vote the same, it shows up as consensus, which is nice. You get that little flag, and you can see what's going on. We actually stopped using pointing poker for the majority of our meetings, and it's now just a fallback. The reason for that is we have a video conference for sprint planning, and my team likes to finger vote for everything. So people would rather do this than use any website. They'd even rather use that than the pointing poker cards. When we all are in the same location for on-sites, people still like to vote with their fingers, which is cool. But if you have 1 or 2 people who are home and can't be on a video conference for whatever reason, we do use this site as a fallback. So tips for remote sprint planning. You want to have your phone bridge or ideally a video. You want to have a screen share so you can go through the JIRA tickets or whatever you're using for your planning. And you want to have pointing poker or something equivalent to it. Stuff that we've learned. Time zones and breaks. Scheduling a 4-hour meeting with people in New York, California, and in Central is impossible. There are no times that are good for all of those teams that don't conflict with lunch, early morning, or late. And just imagine you added Europe or Asia to that. We solve this by having our sprint planning be from 12 to 4:30 Eastern, with a half-hour break for lunch an hour in. So New York and Central will have lunch together on the video conference, and the guy in California takes a walk and hangs out with us. This works out really well. We've built in some team bonding into our sprint planning meeting, and everyone's happy with the time. If somebody's really quiet on the phone or the video conference, ask them what they're thinking, try to draw them out. It's a lot easier to retreat into yourself when people can't see you, or at least they can't poke you. Ensure only one person has the floor at a time. Yeah, I know, that's meeting etiquette. You shouldn't talk over each other in person either, but we're New Yorkers and we do that. Making sure that you have somebody who's willing to say, hey, wait a minute, Sally's trying to say something. After a little bit of that, people actually get used to it. And for video conference, you can always raise your hand, something my team does a lot. If you have a main room, if you have a room that has most of the attendees in it, never press the mute button. There's no such thing as a sidebar that your teammates should not hear. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the weather or anything else. They're part of your team. You want to socialize with each other. When you should use the mute button is for when you're at home or you're by yourself in a remote location and there's annoying background noise. When I'm at home, the fire engines go by every so often. My teammates don't need to hear that. Our teammate in Central had construction going on at sprint planning on Friday. She used the mute button heavily. All right, next ceremony is stand-ups. For your stand-ups, what you don't want to have is Post-it notes. Other than Post-it notes, anything goes. You can use Jira, you can use Scrumwise, Agile Buddy, whatever you want. Whatever your tracking system is for stuff is fine. You just want to make sure that everyone has it. We found that a learning aid helps when you have people who are new to having remote teammates, especially on this project from a long time ago with the full-time remote person that everyone forgot about because we weren't used to having remote people. What we did is we made a sign. We printed out this guy's picture, wrote his name on it, and brought it to meetings. He didn't want his picture in this presentation, so I used the moose's picture, but it was the same idea. His name was Kevin. We brought a picture of Kevin to all of our meetings. The picture stood in the circle because at the beginning we were all in New York except for this one guy, and it worked. Nobody forgot about Kevin. And then when he came in for an on-site, we showed him the Kevin sign, and he was hugely entertained. It just ensures that you don't forget about the person. It could be a stuffed animal, a token, a squeeze ball, whatever it is to represent the fact that you have remote people. As you start to remember they exist, you no longer need your crutch anymore. So it may be silly, but it works. So for your remote stand-up, guess what? You need a phone bridge or video. That's probably a theme here. You need to know what's in the sprint. So everybody could have the Jira up, you could have a printout, whatever you want, any learning aids you need. Tips, encourage your remote people to stand. If they're working in a remote office where they'll be the only one standing, maybe they want to go to the pantry or a phone room or someplace where they're not going to look like a lunatic being the only one standing. But they are part of the team. You want them to feel that way. Open your bridge or video early to chat. You do that in a room, right? When a meeting starts at 12 o'clock, you don't all show up at 11:59 and 59 seconds. That would be impossible. You show up early and you talk to each other about the weather and your weekend and your kids and everything. Your remotes are part of the team. They should get to do that too. Remember, you don't want to use the mute button. And think about what time your stand-up should be. What time is morning? Our stand-up is currently at 11:45 Eastern, which is 8:45 Pacific, a decent hour. Sometimes our teammate takes this call from the ferry. It's fun to hear ferry honks on your stand-up. But it's not excessively early, so it's a decent time for everyone. And most importantly, it doesn't conflict with lunch in New York. So for your remote stand-up, you can go in a circle or you can go through the stories in order. Any system works. Just remember if you're using something that's based on physical proximity that you have remotes. So you can use signs or you can say, well, our circle is going to be in alphabetical order or our circle is going to be based on whatever criteria you want to use. Pair programming. Yeah, I know pair programming is not part of Scrum, but it's really important, so we're going to cover it anyway. For pair programming, you need to make sure that you have a whiteboard. So now we're going to do our first exercise with a whiteboard, and this one I hope is not limited by people. So if you want to participate in this, the URL is ugly, but it is available in a tiny URL. And I see a number of you have vandalized my whiteboard, which means it's working. Yay! Seriously though, whiteboard tools are easy to find. There's a whiteboard in Skype, there's a whiteboard in Google Docs, it's called Word. And then there's a number of free online whiteboard tools, such as the one you see on the screen right now. If you're sharing corporate secrets, you don't wish to use a free cloud-based whiteboard. If you're drawing things and writing S1, it's totally worth it. So this is fun. I like how many people wrote stuff on the whiteboard. This particular whiteboard service provides free whiteboards for up to 30 days and private paid whiteboards forever. Since we use a private whiteboard at work, I'm not going to be showing that one here. What you don't want to do is treat your whiteboard as an afterthought. There's nothing worse for a remote person by, we're all drawing on the whiteboard, but we'll tell you about it. Or, we're all drawing on the whiteboard, we'll send you a picture. What's this picture? They're part of the team. You want to draw on the whiteboard too. With the whiteboard that everybody in the room drew on there, you were just as much a part of that whiteboard as I was. It was great. And the best part is since y'all drew on the whiteboard, I didn't need to use the Chromebook to do it. So we saw web whiteboard here. Deekit I like as well as far as free whiteboard tools go. Now we have remote pairing. So when you have your remote pairing, you've got video or phone, you've got screen share, and you've got the whiteboard. You want to make sure that you're not fighting with your remote over the keyboard on the mouse. This isn't something that's a problem in the real world. Common courtesy suggests that you should not occupy the same physical location and start typing at the same time. When you're both sitting in front of your computer and your own keyboard, this seems to happen a lot. Because it's like, oh, I want to do something. So trade back and forth, try to communicate this out loud, whose turn it is with the keyboard and the mouse, so you're not having a war over the mouse. Pay attention. If you're pairing with someone in the same cubicle, you're not on the phone, you're not clipping your toenails, you're not cutting your hair, and you're not having lunch. You're fully engaged in it, and you want to have that same level of respect for your remote teammate, so you don't want to multitask, you want to pair with them. There's one exception to that, which is when you're doing training, not pairing, training. When you have someone new and you're trying to get them to do something, it's nice for them to be able to do it with a screen share open that you check in on periodically, but they know you're not paying full attention and you're only there if they get stuck, so that's an education thing. And think about whether you want to use chat versus voice. I like using chat, verbal chat, also known as voice, rather than typing chat, because I like being able to use the keyboard and the mouse for what's happening on the screen and talking out loud for what we're doing. Just like if you were sitting with someone in your cubicle, right, you wouldn't communicate via Post-it notes. That would feel ridiculous. Retrospectives, back to Scrum. All right, retrospectives are fun. So we're going to use our next tool, which is Note app. Maybe there'll be stuff in there that I didn't create too. That would be fun. And there are. This Post-it note is not mine. Yay. But for this one, I am going to try to have one show up on the screen so you can see it more precisely. So we've got Notepad app, and I am going to make a notepad, and it's pink. And it's showing up on the screen somewhere. Where is my notepad? Let's zoom out, try to find the pink notepad. OK, well, it's purple. There's a little bit of lag here. I think we're doing a load test of a lot of systems today. My team actually uses OneNote, so I don't use this notepad system as much, but it does work as a free one. I work for a bank, so we're not so enthusiastic about having our business on the internet. That pointing poker website I showed also offers a retrospective tool. We only use it for pointing poker because pointing poker is just numbers and you don't have to actually divulge anything about what you're doing. But again, you want to have your Post-its be something that's friendly to remote people, whether it's OneNote or Post-its or a common Excel document, whatever you want to use. You just want to make sure your remotes are full-fledged members of the team and you don't accidentally slip into the location with the Post-its because now you've made them second-class citizens. So you've got, guess what? You've got voice or video conference, theme there. And you've got your whiteboard or Post-it or whatever tool. So we had 2 lessons that were helpful to us during Hurricane Sandy because we were not used to remote retrospectives at all. We have 3 loud vocal people on our team. I am one of them. And when we were all remote, what would happen is we would all talk at once and no one else would get to say anything and we couldn't hear each other. In person, we solve this problem by raising our hands. On the video conference, we see each other raise our hands and it's fine. Remote, we couldn't do that. So what we wound up doing is we wanted to raise our hand on WebEx, but we weren't using WebEx, we were using Skype. So what we did instead is we picked one member of the team who was going to be the moderator, and anytime someone typed the word hand into the Skype session, that person had the floor. And it's a bit of a hack. I would not want to use that permanently. I would use video conference permanently, but it helped us as a crutch, and it let us gel and become a better team for it. So I'm glad we tried it out. Remote Agile games. When you talk to the Agile community, it's very based on in-personness, right? They talk about how you can pass things around, how you can draw together, how you can play with Legos, all sorts of things. And none of the Agile games are meant for remote audiences, but they're really easy to make remote. So my team played Beautiful Meadow remotely about a month ago, Beautiful Meadow is a game where you're split up into 2 groups. You're each given a task and you draw together. The idea is that one group is given an exhausting spec of what they should draw. 3 cows, 8 flowers, 1 yellow sun, that sort of thing. And the other group is told to draw a meadow with animals in it. And you can guess which group draws a better picture there. But we did that fully remote. We had some time after a retrospective, so I picked 2 captains, the 2 quietest people on our team. They picked their teammates. We had 2 Skype whiteboard sessions going. I put the instructions in a whiteboard session. I took a screenshot at the end, and we talked about it and compared. Quite honestly, it went just as well as the one that I did in person with people, except that it involved our team, which has people in 3 locations. We also learned from that that our colleague in the central time zone draws really good electronic cows. Sprint review. So for sprint review, guess what? You need video or voice, and you need screen share. If you happen to have a product owner who's used to having remote people, you're nice and ahead of the game, and good for you. That's not the case for us. We have product owners who are used to everyone being in the same room all of the time, and unfortunately, they're in New York, so for us, it's easy, but for the rest of our team, it's not so much. So we've been training them about the idea that the team is distributed, and they want to communicate in a way that's distributed as well. If we're on a video conference, great, everybody gets to see something. If we're not on a video conference, we actually mirror what the product owner is doing. If the product owner goes a thumbs up, hey, Joe made a thumbs up. If you do that a few times, Joe actually starts to make a thumbs up by himself. Another thing, if you can get away with it, is have your product owner be remote once or twice. They'll get a nice appreciation of what it's like. And sometimes forcing the issue helped. We had a time where our product owner was in a different city during the meeting and asked me to reschedule it. I'm not rescheduling it. You're going to learn what it's like to be a remote person. It was a perfect opportunity for mentoring, and it happened so naturally, it was awesome. We have a couple of other tips here. First of all, share documents. Google Doc and OneNote are great shared documents. The idea with the shared document is you both see what's happening at the same time. For interviewing, Collab Edit is the same idea. You can see what someone's typing in terms of code. Closing tips. Remember to IM and chat with your remotes. If you're working with someone in person, you wish them a good morning, you talk at the water cooler, you have lunch, that sort of thing. We do the same thing. I have a couple of remote colleagues that I chat with every day about nonsense, but it's the important nonsense that you do for team bonding that makes you actual people. They are a part of the team. Virtual lunch, or since San Francisco joined our team, virtual meals. It's more of brunch for our San Francisco guy. But we do have lunches when someone joins a team or if there's a special occasion. And having them as video conference lunches lets us feel like a team, just like going to lunch as a team makes you feel like a team. It's really important. It's a little more effort to do with a remote, but it's more important than ever because it's easy for them to be forgotten about. It also helps you develop that trust and all of that good stuff that we feel as teammates. And on-sites, our team has seen each other in person about 3 times a year since we went fully remote, and it does help. We spend a lot of time together, and that's full team on-sites. We also do whenever there's an opportunity. For example, yesterday I worked out of our San Francisco office and spent the day with my teammate. And lastly, we're gonna do one more Agile game, I hope. Guess what? This is in the tiny URL. Fist of 5. A lot of the time with Agile, you say, how do you feel about this? Just like we were asked to do in the survey. 5 means this was good, I learned a bunch of stuff, and 1 means I can't believe I'm still here. So let's see if anyone wants to vote in Fist of 5. All right, so we're seeing the votes start to pile in. For whoever voted 2, I'm glad that you didn't actually get up and leave. Aw, did I embarrass them into changing their vote? Maybe they thought the scale was different. But it is anonymous, which is a nice advantage over physical Fist of 5. With physical Fist of 5, everyone knows what's going on. 0, eek. Maybe people are playing with Fist of 5. But overall, it was fun, and remember to fill out the real survey. Are there any questions? I didn't mention IRC because I work for a bank and we block lots of things, so I've never had the opportunity. If you're at home, that would definitely be a viable channel.
What do you learn from the beautiful meadow?
Oh, the idea of the beautiful meadow in person is the importance of not over-specifying things and focusing in on what you want. because what you want is a meadow, not 8 cows. But doing it remotely, you also learn about communication and the whiteboarding tool, which was a happy side effect.
What do you do when it's not New York to LA? What do you do when it's New York to Tokyo?
When it's New York to Tokyo, you're no longer a Scrum team. You're people who work together, and you actually have to divide up the work because it's not possible to have a New York to Tokyo stand-up every day. That's just going to make people unhappy. So there are models that people use for that. One of them, if you only have one person in Tokyo, is more like the contractor model, where you farm out work to them, and then on occasion they come to New York and be part of the team. If you have a lot of people in Tokyo, maybe you should have 2 Scrum teams, and they all be a Scrum team together. That's not the worst case, though. The worst case is New York, Europe, and Tokyo. And it's the same deal. You can't do a Scrum team like that. People have to be around at the same time of the day, at least for part of the day, in order to be a team, or a Scrum team. Other questions? Okay, and with that, enjoy the day and enjoy the beer.